So this guy, Gary Stevenson, you've probably seen him everywhere. He's been on the Diary of a CEO, Piers Morgan, BBC, and no matter where he's been, he's got attention because he sounds and talks a bit different to everybody else going on these shows. Now, let's just take a quick look at some of the clips that's got him a lot of attention recently.
I understand that the middle feels insecure because the middle is insecure, because the middle is actually the place where wealth is being squeezed out from. The poor are suffering as well, but they lost all their wealth a long time ago, right? They're not losing wealth. The middle is losing. And then when I say I want to tax the rich, a lot of people, architects maybe, people making 60, 70 grand, think I'm coming for them. I'm not coming for you, you know what I mean? I don't know your financial situation, but I'm trying to create an alliance, really, of the poor and the middle to protect themselves from the rich. And the rich are trying to create an alliance between themselves and the middle to protect themselves from the poor. They're doing the same thing. So, I put a video saying we need to tax very rich people. They will say, Gary wants to tax you. You, specifically, you. Listen, I want to reduce working people's taxes to raise tax on people who are worth £5 million, £10 million, £20 million. Rishi Sunak is worth £700 million. These guys pay no tax. They can afford to pay more tax. The money that they don't pay as tax, they use to give to their kids to compete with you and your kids for houses. That's why a house costs £1 million and you can't get one. You're
campaigning now to make a change. If you were Chancellor, what would you be doing? What measures do you think could make a difference with this?
I've got to be honest, I get asked this question a lot. I've got to be serious with you. The message I want to send across here is this is not a temporary recession. This is not 2 bad years, 3 bad years. If we do not deal with this crisis of worsening and worsening inequality, it will get worse and worse and worse. The super rich will get richer and richer and richer, and that will push everyone else out. Welfare state will shut down, ordinary families can't buy homes. This will get massively worse. We currently have a tax system which taxes ordinary working people 30, 40, 50%, while billionaires like the Duke of Westminster inherit £10 billion and pay nothing. You need to change the tax system so that we tax ordinary working people like your viewers less and tax the rich and the super rich more. If you don't do that, they're going to eat us alive.
So put a figure on it. What kind of wealth tax would you introduce and where would the limit start?
So I want to be clear, when I'm talking about taxing the rich, it's not about income, it's not about work, it's not about bankers, lawyers, assets. God forbid, even YouTubers or TV presenters. It's about assets. Yeah. We talk about assets over 10 million, but really the problem is billionaires, people with assets of over 100 million. We say 2% over £10 million, just on what you have above that. Lord Kinnock, former Labour leader, seems to be a supporter at the moment. We're getting a lot of supporters now.
Yeah,
but
so
I want to make
saying
it really
2%
clear.
on assets over 10 million, isn't he?
This growth in wealth inequality, it is going to keep the middle class and the working class poor. It is going to gut government services, and that is the people in this room. Okay. Their kids, their grandkids will be
Gary,
poor
you've obviously...
because we are not dealing with wealth inequality.
As you rightly say, you spent a lot of time thinking about this. What do you think the solution or solutions might be?
We have to shift the tax system. We have a tax system which taxes ordinary working people 30, 40, 50, 60%, while people like the Duke of Westminster can inherit £10 billion and pay nothing. If you do that, wealth will be sucked out of the middle class. It's already been completely bankrupted the working class. It will bankrupt the government, which is what we are seeing. And there'll be poverty. There'll be broad poverty. There'll be no middle class left. Why are we taxing working people more than billionaires? Tax wealth, not work. Give these people a break. Give their kids a chance. Tax the billionaires. Of course you should.
What makes you think it would be different here?
Fiona, we did it here. We did it here. We did it here in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and people like my dad, people like my granddad, who was a bus conductor, were able to buy houses, have financial security, have pensions, have retirements, go on holidays. We did it here. We did it here, and we're losing that now because we're not taxing the rich. The rich are getting richer, and ordinary families are losing the ability to buy houses, have kids. We can do it. We've done it before. When the second home stamp duty tax was brought in, I was very surprised because I didn't think the Conservatives would tax rich people. I looked into it. There was an exemption for people who bought 7 or more homes at once. And then Jeremy Hunt went and bought 7 homes. Listen, I understand it is difficult to tax rich people because politicians are rich people and they're funded by rich people and they put loopholes in the system that mean rich people don't pay them and it ends up being paid by working people. That doesn't mean we don't do it. What kind of world have we made here? We need to look at we always look at the individual. This person has a mental health problem. This person has a mental health problem. It doesn't come out of nowhere. These people don't just suddenly get sick. My dad worked for the post office and he had a family and he bought a house and he has a retirement, he has a pension. Kids can't get that. It's a societal problem. We need to make sure young people have economic opportunity.
This clip in particular is one of my favourites, and I think it really kind of highlights his point.
We need to make a decision as to whether we want millionaires' cash to go into the exchequer or not. I appreciate that millionaires and billionaires do have a habit seemingly of avoiding quite a lot of tax. But let's use the example of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, okay, the owner of Ineos. Before he moved to Monaco in 2020, he was adding hundreds of millions to HMRC. Now he's contributing nothing because he's a classic example of if the tax take gets too high, then unfortunately contributions go down because the rich can afford to move elsewhere and avoid it. And that's not progress.
Can I ask you a quick question on that? Do you think that China would allow somebody to own billions and billions and billions of pounds of Chinese assets and then move to Monaco and not pay tax on those assets?
I have no idea what the policy would be in China, but then lots of billionaires in China are reliant on slave labour, so it's probably not the best example.
Listen, we have given the literal assets of this country to very, very, very wealthy people, and we have created a tax system that makes it voluntary for them to pay tax. If you do that, ordinary people will get poorer and poorer and poorer every year, and millionaires and billionaires will get richer and richer every year, and ordinary people will not be able to buy homes and have families.
But Gary,
and I'm
you're
not just saying that, I bet on that.
rich don't pay tax in the UK, are you?
The tax burden is falling on working people. Working people pay rates on much higher levels.
But you also agree, I appreciate that working people are paying tax. Everyone's paying tax. Is anyone who's working not paying tax? The rich do pay their taxes. You're saying that you think they should pay more tax on their wealth? And are you differentiating between wealth or inheritance?
Wealth. They should pay tax on their wealth. If you don't tax these people on their wealth, they will squeeze everybody out.
And the European examples where that's been tried, France, Norway, etc., where they've had to scrap those schemes because A, they're too much to administrate, and B, they don't get enough revenue in. What's your response to that? Because it's not as if European nations haven't tried this. They've tried it, and unfortunately, it's failed.
So is he right? There's been pushback from people like Fiona Bruce, as you've seen, that say you can't tax the rich. It's been tried before in other countries in Europe, and it hasn't worked. But then when you look into that even more, there's been pushback on that claim, as you can see here.
You will know as well as I do that wealth taxes have been tried in a number of countries. Only Switzerland has stuck with it. I mean, they've got no capital gains tax, they've got no inheritance tax, they've got a slightly different situation.
Yep.
But most countries have abandoned them because they don't bring in that much revenue.
So that's Fiona Bruce saying that wealth taxes don't work. It was tried in Europe and it failed. Guess what? She's wrong. So despite people pushing lies and myths, it has actually been a success in Norway. So as you can see, there's a graph on screen. In 2022, they increased their wealth, the wealth tax, sorry, to 1.1%. This graph shows the implementation of a wealth tax, and you can see the revenue from the wealth tax skyrockets. So that's Fiona Bruce, big high-profile journalist, earning a lot of money, just blazingly saying that wealth taxes don't work in Europe. Camilla Tominey saying Norway scrapped it. Well, they didn't. So they're both lying or they're wrong.
So it seems it could work. And it seems logical that if you are a foreign-based person, company, or trust fund, and you have assets that are generating money in the UK, that you should be taxed at the point of the asset, not in the country's own tax system or the trust fund or wherever it may be. Because the asset is fixed. It's fixed into the UK. When Roman Abramovich left to go back to Russia, Chelsea Football Club stayed where it was. You can't move the club. The asset is fixed to the country, and that is where the asset should be taxed. Now, he's not saying this should be done for everybody, only for people with assets over £10 million. So one of the big arguments he had, the big debates that got a lot of views, was on the Diary of a CEO with Daniel Priestley. Check out this clip where Daniel focuses on the argument that it's tough to do this, and this is why.
But the idea with taxing billionaires at wealth, billionaires will just leave. They just get up and leave. And not just billionaires.
But what do billionaires own? What do billionaires own?
Companies.
And where do companies get their money from?
Revenues.
And where do the revenues come from?
Purchasing. People purchasing.
And where do
stuff.
those people live?
All over the world.
We can tax them at that point.
Well, that's consumption tax.
This is the thing.
That's a consumption tax.
No, it's not. It's a tax on
VAT
profits.
is a tax on
You
revenues.
can tax these guys on profits based on where the revenues come from.
So it's very easy to move profits internationally. See, Stephen had a Starbucks cup. When he buys that Starbucks, it's bought from a British company who licenses the Starbucks logo from Luxembourg or somewhere like that. So 15%. So here we are saying, oh, we're going to tax their profits. They say, oh, I wish we were profitable. Sorry. Unfortunately, we had to do that licensing deal with that international corporation.
I know how profit shifting works. Okay, so are you telling me a company is selling to the UK, the US, enormous amount of profit in the US, and they turn around and say, actually, our profit's not in the US. You think the US is incapable of going and looking if that's seeing where the profit is?
I'm not saying that you can't do this. I'm saying that the benefits of doing it, it's so hard to tax wealth, for example, or it's so hard to tax millionaires and billionaires that you end up cutting off your nose to spite your face. For every, if we create Britain, for example, and we build a brand which is that we're anti-wealth, we don't want you to ever have more than 10 million. If you've got more than 10 million, we punish you. Every young entrepreneur who comes to me and says, Dan, do you think I should start a company here in this country? I'm going to say, well, if you do, they'll take it. As soon as you start to make it, they'll take it. If you're successful, if you get investment, they're going to tax you your wealth. If you sell the company, they're going to take it off you. I'm going to basically say to that young entrepreneur, don't build your business in Britain. Go start it somewhere that they're more proactive and positive towards entrepreneurs.
Are we seeing that now with this, they call it the millionaire exodus, which is, for people that don't know, the UK is set to lose the greatest proportion of millionaires in the world this parliament. I'll put a graph on the screen, which is this one here, and that little red line here is us losing all of our millionaires at the moment. And in 2024, it's estimated that 10,800 high net worth individuals left the UK, which is a 157% increase from the previous year, which means that 1 millionaire is departing every 45 minutes. The UK millionaire exodus is equal to losing 530,000 average taxpayers. And another stat, the top 10% of earners in the US account for nearly half of all consumer spending. The top 1% of income taxpayers in the UK are projected to contribute about 30% of total income tax from 2024 to 2025. Why are all these millionaires running away?
Well, it's not because they're taxing their wealth, because we don't have any wealth taxes.
Why do you think they're leaving?
I think the reason they're leaving is because the UK economy is really, really weak. Because the UK consumer is really, really weak. Because we've absolutely crushed the spending power of your average British family.
And where are they going?
Your average British family can barely afford to feed the kids and turn the heating on. So why are you going to start a business here when the customers are absolutely impoverished?
Look, it corresponds with a new tax that we brought in, which was we ended the non-dom scheme. So the non-dom scheme basically said if you're living in the UK, but you've got businesses all over the world, then we only tax you on what you've got in the UK. And if you die in the UK, we'll only tax you on your UK assets for inheritance tax if you're a non-dom. But if you die in the UK and you've got wealth in India, once that non-dom scheme ended, they basically said, we will tax you on everything globally. If you're if you're a tax resident in the UK, everything you've got globally, we want 40% of it. So unfortunately, every wealth manager contacted their clients and said, you can't stay here. You're going to have to get out. It's gotten really bad. 1,000 people a month are leaving. And in the UK, 1% of people pay 30% of the taxes, 10% of people pay 60% of the taxes. And you imagine if we're sitting out at dinner and there's 10 of us out for dinner and one person says, hey, I've got this, I'll get 60% of the bill tonight. We say to them, no, it should be 70%, it should be 80%. And they say, you know what, I'll get up and leave. So they leave, everyone else's bill just doubled. So what's going to happen is if we drive the millionaires out of this country, every ordinary normal person who pays 10 grand a year in tax will now have to pay 20 grand a year in tax.
So the reason they left is because we used to allow them to not pay tax. And
on their global incomes, on their global
So isn't
businesses.
it a bit more like if we were 10 of us at dinner and there was one guy who came onto dinner on the condition he wouldn't pay, then leaves? Because these guys weren't paying tax anyway. If the reason they left is because they weren't paying tax.
It's like saying, hey, I'll pay 60% of this table. And they say at the table, hey, wait a second, we also want you to pay for everything that's happening at other restaurants as well.
This debate does highlight how difficult it would be to do what Gary says. It's by no means a simple task. But why is it necessary? I think this clip from Piers Morgan Uncensored perfectly sums it up.
If you know your history, can you point to a period in UK history, for example, where massively punishing rich people by massively taxing them has actually benefited the country?
Listen,
because I can't really.
My dad was born in 57. He worked for the post office, Royal Mail, 35 years. Never once earned more than the average wage in the country. He was able to buy a house,
support family. My parents are retired now. They own their own property. They're financially secure. That's not possible now. He lived in an era where the top rate of tax was much, much, much higher. The 50s, the 60s, the 70s in the UK, in the US, the top rate of tax on large estates was significantly higher. And in that time period, it's not a coincidence, ordinary people could afford to buy houses.
You can see from this diagram the huge difference between earnings and house prices between 1970 to today. The huge disparity is evidence of the rise of inequality. When the rich and the children of the rich can outbid working class and middle class people, it puts the prices of the houses up and prices them out of the market. It's gone in some places to 8 times salary to buy a house. And these foreign-based people and corporations are buying up the market. So all regular people can do is rent forever, being trapped in a never-ending cycle. So why has Gary become so popular now? Gary started publishing his thoughts on his website 10 years ago on wealtheconomics.org. But nobody read it. It didn't really go anywhere. In the meantime, Gary went back into education to see how he could go about solving this himself or learn more about the issue. So he went to Oxford University and studied economics and inequality. But at university, he realized the situation was worse than he thought, and the university professors didn't really know what had happened in recent times at all. They were not in touch with what's going on in the way that he was, betting against it and being kind of at ground level. Then, in 2020, COVID happened. And once the government started handing out furloughs, started handing out bounce-back loans, Gary could see that the money was going to trickle not down to the poor, but up to the rich. Because the money was going mainly to the business owners, whether it be the bounce-back loans to the business owners or the furloughed money that would go to the working class and middle class people. But because it wasn't enough money, it would only go to pay fundamentals like rent. And the rent goes to the property owners who are the rich. So the money still goes to the rich. This then promoted Gary to start posting his videos, like I said. He created his own YouTube channel where he started to clearly explain economics in a way that anyone could understand. And he started going viral because of this reason. He could explain how wealth inequality drives low interest rates and the link between economic policy and class struggle. Still appearing on radio shows and writing in papers, but by no means a household name yet, Gary was consistent with the same simple message: that taxing the rich to protect the working and middle class was necessary, else this country was going to get worse and worse in terms of the divide. Then someone suggested to Gary, "You've got some crazy stories, you should write a book." Originally, he dismissed the idea, but then eventually he did start to write some of his stories out, and he signed with the biggest publishing company in the world, or at least one of them, Penguin Publishing. So Gary then released his book, The Trading Game, A Confession. Over the summer, I spent most of my time walking around Warsaw in Poland, listening to the audiobook, and I absolutely loved it. It's an amazing story. Forget what you think about his policy on taxing the rich, if that's good or if that's bad. The audiobook is an amazing rags to riches story of a guy that came from the wrong background to then end up at somewhere like Citibank, but through his mindset and through his natural ability and gifts with maths, he was able to find his way to get onto the trading floor at one of the biggest banks in the world. And then he managed to flourish in that situation. Gary didn't have the connections or the right accent to be at a bank like Citibank, but he got invited to a game where it was fair for everyone, a trading game, a card game, different to poker, but more like a trading type system. And he learnt the game, and I don't want to give away anything else that happens in the book. He's talked about this on most of his interviews, but through that game, he managed to get into Citibank, and he probably wouldn't have got there otherwise because he didn't come from the right background where he was told things in advance that he needed to do, like take up clarinet, like go for internships in year one, all these things that are kind of inside information that the rich kids know, but outsiders never get told. The rich kids don't even know that this is privy information because it's just normal to them. But regular people coming into the universities They're not told this, so they're not given a fair chance, even if they got better or same grades as them, because they're not given access to the information. But Gary had a few things in his favor: good at maths, and he was hungry for that success. The way Gary became successful at Citibank was betting against the market. And he then became, in 2011, the top trader at Citibank, which is, again, something he said in all of his podcasts. One of the top traders in the world, even, for 2011. So in short, he was a former interest rate trader at Citibank and made millions betting against trickle-down economics, which broadly means they bet that tax cuts and deregulation wouldn't lead to strong growth or inflation. So they made money by investing in assets that gain value when interest rates stay low. One thing that's interesting about Gary is even when people debate him or people put out hit pieces against him,
that business about biggest trader in the whole world is completely and utterly delusional.
The comments are overwhelmingly in favor of Gary's message and supporting Gary over those people. I've never seen support like that online for anyone. I mean, if you look at this video here, one of his former colleagues, who is mentioned in the book, did a piece where he disputed some of what Gary says. And if you look at the comments, they're overwhelmingly supportive of Gary still, because he has the public behind him in a way that I've never seen. So why is that? Why is Gary so popular with the general population and has so many people behind him? Well, I think it's down to three things. He has insider credibility. He rose to the top of the banking world, so he knows what it's actually like on the other side. He explains economics in a way that anyone can understand, and because he comes from a working class background and still appears the same way he probably did when he was 18, he has that connection with young people that they can relate to him. So he's got credibility, he can explain economics in a way that anyone can understand, and he connects with people from the same background as him. This is what most of the rich people that maybe have a similar idea can't do, because they haven't got those three things. And I think that's an incredible recipe that's given him a voice that people are listening to. He was one of us that kind of beat the system at their own game and then wanted to change the system because he could see the flaws in it that were damaging the society that he lived in still. He still lives in London and he still wants to see the UK do well. And he wants to see middle class and working class people, like his parents were, able to be able to afford a house, able to flourish and have build up assets of their own so they can retire and have something to bring them money in the future. And that is getting harder and harder for young people. That is why he's become so huge on YouTube. I mean, his own YouTube channel, Gary's Economics, has 1.4 million subscribers at today's date, which is an unbelievable achievement when you're speaking about such a niche thing like economics. Not many other people could do that. Obviously, he's had a huge run on the podcast circuit. With the backing of Penguin Publishing, they managed to put him out after a 1 year blackout. He couldn't talk because they didn't want to interfere with the book release. And then once the book came out, he was everywhere. Like the podcast we've already mentioned, Diary of a CEO, Piers Morgan. And that gave his message a huge megaphone and has raised awareness massively. He said on an interview the two biggest pushes he had in following was when the hard copy came out and then when the paperback came out, which makes sense because Penguin did a huge push and that then raised people's attention or awareness, I should say, of him. And then they started looking into him and finding his own YouTube channel. So what is Gary's mission? To get the UK or any government around the world to follow the idea that in order to stop inequality, they should tax the rich on their own country's based assets over £10 million and not let them get away anymore with using tax systems or tax loopholes such as offshore companies or trust funds to avoid paying tax on the same property that working class people or middle class people have to pay. And while they are paying 40 to 50% tax on their salaries, the rich are paying almost no tax because they're using loopholes and tax systems that allow them to avoid it. Gary feels that inequality is wrecking the economy, and if he makes enough people angry about this and aware of it, things will change because he will not be able to be ignored any longer. And either the Labour government or the Conservative Party, whoever's in charge, will have to speak to him, have to listen to him, because he'll have enough power behind his voice, because the public will be behind his message. Now, there isn't only Gary saying this. There's actually a charity called Millionaires for Humanity, which Gary's part of, which has other wealthy individuals, millionaires, that are saying the same thing. It's not just one person saying this, it's many people. But Gary seems to have the biggest voice for those 3 reasons I already mentioned. So what's my conclusion? What do I think of Gary? I think Gary's a national treasure. Someone who could be sat on a beach in the Philippines retired because he's already made enough money to set him up for life. But instead, he's chosen to come back, try to fix the problem, and be a voice for change, and spend an ungodly amount of time doing TV shows, radio shows, podcasts, to spread his message that he thinks they should tax the rich. And when you say things like this, you are a target. You are going to get people at the Daily Mail coming to shut you down. He already mentioned in one interview that they're outside his parents' house trying to interview them. You put a target on your back when you go after the super rich. So fair play to the guy for doing that, because he doesn't have much to gain and he has a lot to lose. It goes to show that if you have credibility, if you have something to say that goes against the grain, you will get attention. And if you are benefiting people and asking for nothing in return, you can reach unbelievable heights in terms of a following and reputation, which Gary has done through his backstory and his mission. So I think Gary's great overall. I'm a fan for what it's worth. I hope he wins. I hope he gets what he wants, because I think it would be the greater good for the middle and working class people of the UK. If you found anything in this video interesting, the best way you can thank me is by subscribing. Definitely listen to Gary's audiobook. It's a great listen. I loved it. Whether you agree with his policy or not, the book is a great listen. That's why he's become so successful as well. And that's why Penguin Publishing wanted it. So listen to his book and subscribe.